From Wall Street to best-selling books, today's guest has cracked the code on performance and positivity. But before the keynote stages and leadership boards, there were patterns that shaped his approach to life. And it all started with one powerful belief that life is too short. Welcome to Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked, the podcast for anyone ready to lead themselves and others differently. I'm Bukola, keynote speaker with over 20 years of experience in HR. I'm a firm believer that all leadership begins with self-leadership, because when you choose to change your pattern, you unlock the power to change your world. Welcome to Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked. I'm your host, Bukola. This is the podcast where we explore the unseen patterns that shape our leadership, our decisions, and the way we show up, not just at work, but in life. Today, I'm joined by someone who has achieved extraordinary success, but chose to reframe it through the lens of happiness. Scott White is a seasoned CEO, entrepreneur, and Amazon #1 best-selling author of The Life is Too Short Guy. With a background in corporate finance, law, and entrepreneurship, Scott brings a rare blend of business acumen and human insight to every room he enters. As the current chairman of a public real estate company and former CEO of Invesque, Scott led massive growth, quadrupling assets, and taking the company public. His earlier years included 13 plus years on Wall Street and experience as a CPA and attorney. But Scott's impact extends beyond profit. His work now centers on cultivating happiness, gratitude, and purpose-driven leadership in organizations. Whether he's speaking to executive teams, writing, or coaching, he's on a mission to make the world happier, one smile at a time. And he's also completed 15 marathons, an Ironman, and a triathlon too. So join me in welcoming Scott White to the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Scott, thank you for being here. I'm so glad to have you. How's your week going?
Fantastic. A lovely week.
Oh, good. I'm so excited to have you. I know when I reached out to you, you were like, you're willing to interview me on a podcast? I was like, I'm doing a podcast. What was your reaction to that?
I'm so excited for you. It's a new opportunity, a new challenge. I was grateful you reached out to me, and I'm excited to be here. I truly am.
Good. Well, I've always been, I've really respected how you carry yourself and just didn't realize we had so much in common in terms of being from New Jersey, working on Wall Street, and the fact that we're both active too. But there's so much about your background that I'm excited to share with the audience. So I hope I did your bio justice. But before I go into some questions, tell me, is there anything I missed or is there anything I got wrong?
You got it perfect. You just missed my greatest accomplishment.
Okay, what was that?
I am married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together 35 years, and I'm quite proud.
That's so sweet. In high school, New Jersey high school?
High school in New Jersey. Yes, we've been together since the junior year of high school. It's been a long time together. I'm very grateful and quite frankly shocked she's put up with me for 35 years, but it is my proudest accomplishment. Other than that, the bio sounded wonderful.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad you added that because that is a proud accomplishment for sure. That is significant. So thanks for sharing. So now for those listening, can you share the best way they can contact you online or get in touch with you just to learn more about you or consider you for, speaking? What's a good way to contact you?
Sure. The best way to find me and learn about me is at my website, lifeistooshortguy.com. That's lifeistooshortguy.com. And there you can learn about my book, my speaking engagements, my newsletter, my platform, lifeistooshortguy.com.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's take it back a bit. A lot of your leadership style today, it seems to be very intentional, human, and grounded in joy. But I realize that doesn't just happen overnight. So, Scott, when you think about how you show up as a leader today with optimism and vision, what were some of the early patterns that shaped your leadership approach?
As you correctly identified, it's a leadership approach and philosophy that has evolved over the course of a lifetime. There wasn't a salient moment where all of a sudden I figured it all out. In fact, I haven't figured most of it out yet. I think leadership and careers are a journey and an opportunity to continue to explore. As you mentioned, I was trained initially as an attorney, and I won't make any attorney jokes, but attorneys have a A mindset for the most part.
Mhm.
I then cut my teeth on Wall Street, and Wall Street is a interesting place, for lack of a better phrase. And there's certain foundational elements to being a junior banker on Wall Street and surviving 13 years as an investment banker. I had a wonderful, wonderful experience, but it was very much my philosophy at the time. But certainly when I started, was all about productivity. It was all about profitability. It was all about climbing the corporate ladder. It was all about survival of the fittest. I mean, that really is the Wall Street mentality. I started with a class of probably 80 some odd people, and within 3 or 4 years, more than half were gone. So that foundation was, I think, where I cut my teeth or where I started. But my leadership, my philosophy has evolved substantially over the course of the last, I'd say, 25 plus years. And there's certainly been key salient moments that had a meaningful impact on that evolution of my thinking.
No, thank you for that. You touched on, I definitely know that Wall Street environment, it's no joke. It's definitely no joke. Is there anything from like your upbringing or even schooling that contributed at all to your style as a leader?
Yes, I mean, 100%. Everything contributes to your style. I'd say there were 3 or 4 events in my life that had a meaningful impact on my life philosophy today. So my life philosophy today I bring to work, I bring to leadership, I bring to teams. And that, as you said, is life is too short. So where did that come from? I wasn't born with that. I think there were 4 events in my life that transformed that helped me with that foundation. Early on, when I was about 10 years old, I was working on a project in my house with my dad, and he cut his finger. And it was one of those sort of bad cuts. He probably needed more than a band-aid, but he didn't sever the finger. So he went to the hospital. And in the middle of the night, my mom came running into my room and jarred me awake. And she's like, Dad had a heart attack while he was waiting in the emergency room. And, Dad spent 2 weeks in the hospital. And then he and my mom flew from New Jersey to Houston, where he had bypass surgery. And this was the mid 1980s, where, it was a very different time. And even today, I'd say that's fairly serious surgery. But in the mid 1980s, it was no doubt a meaningful event in his life and in my life. And I still remember to this day the moment after the surgery when the phone rang, and I was at my grandparents' house. My grandmother called me in. She handed me the phone. And I raised the phone up and I hear, Scott, Scott, it's Dad. And I just collapsed, tears pouring out. And look, I was 10 years old. Could I fully comprehend what was going on? No, but there's no doubt that was the first seed, I think, that was planted for me to realize life is too short, to live in the moment, to be grateful, which is all part of my leadership philosophy. That was I think, an early foundational moment. There's no doubt the events of 9/11 had a meaningful impact on me. I was working on Wall Street on that fateful day. I had come across the river on the ferry. I was living over in Hoboken, came across the river on the ferry, walked right by the World Trade Center maybe 30 minutes before the events. I was about 6 or 7 blocks north of the World Trade Center, and I was on a call. I remember it was a call with a potential Japanese client, and I heard the first plane hit the building. I didn't know what it was, and it was early in the morning, and the call continued, and I'm watching the West Side Highway, and I see emergency vehicles start to come down the West Side Highway one after the other. So I put the phone on hold and walk across the building, and I see a big hole in the side of the World Trade Center and smoke pouring out. Again, it was early, and I didn't really know what was going on. As I stood there, I watched the second plane come down the Hudson River, turn on its side, and crash into the building. And there's no doubt that had a meaningful impact on me. In fact, I would tell you that the day before that, I was, maybe 2 years into my investment banking career, and I was run hard, go hard, work till your eyes bleed. I slept under my desk. I lived at the office. I mean, I remember I had toiletries at the office, and there was no concept around having children. My wife and I were married, and we were both on the same page. She wanted children sooner than I did, but our first daughter was born about 13, 14 months later. So there's no doubt that had a meaningful impact on me. And again, getting back to your specific question, that translates into my leadership philosophy. And then, a few years later, unfortunately, I did lose my father at a fairly young age. And a few years after that, I lost my mother. And there's no doubt these 4 events had a meaningful impact on my life philosophy and on my leadership style.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Thank you for going so deep on that. And I don't want to gloss over the ages. So, do you mind touching on how old you were for the four different, let's see, like,
Let's see if I can do the math. You're going to make
you don't
me
have
do
to do math.
a
You don't have
little
to
bit of
do
math.
math.
So let's see. I was 10 years old. My father had a heart attack. For the events of 9/11, I was about 28 years old. My father passed away when I was 33.
Okay. Okay.
Does that sound about right? Yeah, my mom passed away when I was about 43. She was a decade after my dad. So, fairly early stages of my life and no doubt had meaningful impacts. A lot of things impacted my leadership
Yeah.
philosophy. As you mentioned, schooling, who I surround myself with, who I worked for, who I worked with. But there's no doubt those were four salient events that had a meaningful impact on my life philosophy and on my leadership philosophy.
You've spent time in high performance environments. You touched on that a little bit too. Finance, law, like what attracted you to those lines of work?
Well, I think it's natural to my what motivates and inspires me. I'm always up for a challenge. As you mentioned, I've run a few marathons. I've done an Ironman triathlon. I wrote a book. I've started businesses. I'm always up for a challenge. So I'm looking for the constant adrenaline, the constant learning, the constant getting out of your comfort zone, the constant trying new things. You talk about your shift philosophy and changing kind of where you are and where you're going. And I think I appreciate that even more now as I get older and as I reflect on what I've done. I say to people, I never plan to retire. I have a lifetime and I think many more chapters ahead where I just want to try new things. And by the way, some of those things are low key smaller things. I'm not necessarily finding the cure for cancer or saving the world every day, but again, thinking about your shift philosophy, changing, kind of slowing down, right? And observing what's going on and say, you know what, it's time to try this or that.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. And I think as I get older too, I just see it's like you're not if you're not growing, you're not able to really make an impact around you. So that adapting is just so key to me with that shift framework and everything. So I can relate to everything you just touched on. Now, when you think about success and how you identify success, or even in the past, was there a moment when your priorities shifted about success? And at what point, well, you touched on the too short philosophy, life is too short philosophy, but let's talk a little bit more about that shift that occurred around your priorities for success. Yeah.
No doubt, there has been a significant shift, but I don't think it was a moment in time. I think it was an evolutionary shift. I can't pinpoint when it happened, but there's no doubt in my early 20s, in my
Mhm.
graduating college, it was all about accolades. It was about putting wins on the board. It was about keeping score. It was about progressing quickly through the corporate ladder. When I graduated from business school, I started as a accountant, as an auditor at Price Waterhouse. And in accounting firms, kind of like law firms, there's a lockstep. You spend 2 years doing this and 3 years doing that and 3 years doing this. And my goal when I started was I was going to beat the system. I was going to advance quicker than those in my class. And I did. We started together in 1995. I had graduated with my MBA and I started Price Waterhouse. And there was a 3-year path to senior accountant that I did in 2 years. And that was part of my mentality. And I knew I had to work at Price Waterhouse for 2 years to become a CPA, and I worked like a week and a half or 2 weeks short of 2 years, banked my vacation, became a CPA, ran to law school. I graduated law school and immediately started studying for the bar. The day I graduated, I started studying for the bar. I spent the last Tuesday of July taking the New Jersey bar, the last Wednesday of July taking the national exam, last Thursday of July taking the New York bar. Actually, reverse that. Friday, I took off, and Monday, I started in investment banking. And then I was on the treadmill of how fast can I accelerate beyond my class. Somewhere along that journey, I realized life's too short, and I realized there are other things that are important. Certainly, having kids changes your perspective. Certainly, dealing with aging and death and illnesses certainly changes your perspective. And there's no doubt today, I really want to have a meaningful impact on people. I really want to change people's lives and perspectives. It's a big part of why I wrote the book. It's a big part of why I'm speaking now. I would love nothing more than for at least just one of your listeners to take away life's too short, engage in the moment, chase your dreams, smile, focus on positivity, be grateful. And that's really how I define success today.
And I mean, when you describe some of the early drive that you had to really focus on result, I mean, you were focused. Is there anything you can share that you were able to do to just kind of manage that energy a little differently? Because, it seemed like you had so many years to kind of practice this focus and then you made a change. Is there anything you can speak to around how you managed to shift your energy so that you're treating your team differently, making decisions differently?
I think it was an evolution. Again, I don't think there
Mhm.
was one thing that happened. I think as I
Okay.
look at life's journey, I
Yeah.
look at things like the events I just talked about. I look
Mhm.
at the ability to impact people's lives. And I realized, when I worked my way up to more senior leadership roles, I was impacting a lot of people, and how I showed up and what I brought to the workplace and what I brought to the team had a meaningful impact on those that worked directly with me, those that worked with those people, their families. There's a ripple effect, and we all have an impact on the people that we interact with on a daily basis. And that's not just leaders, because to a certain degree, we're all leaders. How you show up and how you treat the people you work with, or the other stakeholders, quite frankly, your customers, your consultants, whatever it is, you have an impact on them, on their lives, on their families' lives. And I'd say it took some time to understand that and learn that. I there wasn't a moment, it was an evolution.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. What are some practices or mindsets that keep you aligned with your message? Even when things get stressful, you talked about how through the years had to evolve and even took on some higher level leadership roles. So, any practices or mindsets that you can offer that help keep you aligned to that message, even when it was stressful?
Yeah, look, there's so many of them. We probably don't have enough time. And
Okay,
in the
okay,
course of
okay.
the podcast, I'll give you a few really easy, simple things that I do. And I
Mhm.
talk a lot about this in the book. And when I speak, there's so many little things that people can do to change their perspective, to change their life, to change the world around them. And that's a big part of my message, because I think people get too caught up in big academic concepts, or crazy esoteric, what's the secret to life, or, how do I that's not it. Here, let me start with some of the simplest things that I tell people. And it's really, mind blowing when I say to people, I often stand on a stage and I say to people, okay, little things make a big difference. I'm going to give you one of the littlest things that makes a big difference, but I need you to focus. You ready? Smile.
Smiling. Yep.
And I literally look at the audience and I watch, and people slowly start to smile. And then they start looking around. They're like, wait, am I supposed to smile? Who's smiling? And I say, stop and think for a minute. How do you feel the second after you smile? How do you feel when you see the people around you smiling? How do you feel when you're walking down the street and someone smiles at you? So now take this as a best practice. And it sounds so ridiculous, right? When you first hear it, you're like, really? This is what he wrote a book about? I mean, come on. But think about the impact you could have on the world. It's been proven empirically that a smile generates chemicals in your brain that make you up to 20% happier. So what does that mean? What's the practical takeaway? Scott, give me something to latch onto. Okay. Smile right now when you're listening to this. Think about how you feel. When this is over, smile again. When you get in your car later today, smile. When you get home and walk in the door, smile. When you sit down at the dinner table, smile. When you go in the shower, smile. You're alone, no one even sees you. But if you get in this habit of proactively thinking about smiling, all of a sudden you start to change the way you see the world, the way you treat other people, the way you interact with people. Smile. Such an easy one. I'm going to give you another one.
Okay.
Do you remember your very first thought this morning, Bukola? You opened your eyes and what did you think?
My very first thought,
Very first thought.
oh my goodness. It's Monday.
Right. So
Um,
I won't put you through the torture, but the way you answer is pretty much the way most people answer. I usually say to people, raise your hand if you remember your first thought. And, if I'm in the audience, I don't know, 15% of the people will raise their hand. I will say to people, simple activity. Just think about this. Most people, if I say, what was your first thought? They either won't remember, or it'll be something benign. It'll be something like, it's Monday. I gotta go to the bathroom. Oh, I need a cup of coffee, right? It's something whatever, meaningless. I call those blurry glasses. And what I say to people is, when you wake up tomorrow morning and every morning going forward, real exercise, try this, just humor me. Reach over to your dresser and grab your glasses and put them on as soon as you wake up. You don't wear glasses? Fine. Do this. Literally do this. I do this.
mhm.
Put on your glasses, because there's an activity associated with this. Most people put on what I think are normally blurry glasses, what I just said to you. Unfortunately, I believe a fair number of people put on muddy glasses. They woke up this morning and they're like, ugh, it's Monday. The weekend's over. I don't really want to go to work. I'm tired. It's dark. I don't feel like getting out of bed. Why not tomorrow? Reach over like I did this morning, put on my crystal clear glasses, and I started my day literally this morning with, it's Monday. It's awesome. I'm in one of my happy places. The woman I love is in bed next to me. I am going to swim this morning and the sun is shining. It's the middle of the summer, so it's 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun is shining. My kids are home. They're both in college, or one recently graduated. They're not always home. And wait, I'm going to be on Bukala's show today. Here we go. Boom, look at that. I started my day without a list, without writing stuff down, literally reaching over. Today is going to be a wonderful day. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can and you think you can't, you're probably right. Why not create a roadmap for success for the day? I understand, especially the person who put on the muddy glasses, is sitting there
Right.
saying, yeah, I know. But then I step out of bed and twist my ankle, or I get in my car and back into another car. I got it. You can't control everything that happens through you throughout the day. You can control the lens through which you view the world, and you can certainly control your first thought of the day. Set the tone right for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that. You gave us some good nuggets there. Thank you. My question, you kind of answered it. My other question was, what do you say to leaders who hear your message and they say, that sounds great, but I don't have time for happiness right now. I need to get business results. I would imagine you come across a lot of great personalities in the Northeast. So I don't know, can you think of maybe an instance where you had to kind of bump up against that and really take that on?
So, I would say for the most part, leaders buy into it. They just don't make it a priority. I
Oh,
would
okay.
say the greater level of criticism I get, and people have challenged me on this, and I think it's somewhat fair, is Scott, that's great, but you are a privileged, educated white male.
I see.
Welcome to the rest of the world. And that's a
Oh,
fair
okay. Okay.
observation. Here's what I would say in response is
Yeah.
that happiness, gratefulness, and positivity are not absolutes. They're relative. There's a relative spectrum of
Mhm.
where I am today and how can I move up this spectrum. Let me give you a great example. So I'm a huge, huge, huge college football fan, not just college football, but Rutgers football. I
Oh
I
yeah,
love
Rutgers.
Rutgers football. I'm the biggest Rutgers football fan you've ever met. I've been
Oh
to
my God.
hundreds of games,
My
home and
whole high
away.
school went to Rutgers.
I love it. I love it. Now we're connecting. Anyway, so I was at a game about I guess it's 15 years ago, where most people know that the kickoffs tend to be the most dangerous time of the game. So this is about 15 years ago, kickoff, and the Rutgers players are barreling down the field. On the other end of the field, Army receiver receives it, running up the far sideline, and boom, massive collision. Massive collision. Players go down. Emergency medical personnel come onto the field and they're working on players for a little while. Players slowly start to get up, and one remains down. That one player, his name is Eric, and Eric was put a collar was put around Eric. He was put on a backboard. He was then lifted onto a cart and taken out of the stadium. Eric, I was at that game, and I have still kept in touch with Eric, and I talk about him in my book. So Eric tells me that that night he heard the doctor say to his mother, "Eric has fractured his C3 and C4 vertebrae. Eric will never walk again. Eric will never breathe again on his own. Eric will never eat solid foods." We are hopeful that Eric makes it through the surgery. Fast forward 15 years, and Eric has gone on to become a professional sports broadcaster. He's gone on to become an author. He owns a coffee shop. He has a bourbon brand. He's a motivational speaker. He's written a book. I could keep going on.
Mhm.
He is still paralyzed. And I would tell you, and this gets back to what I was saying before about relative and not absolute. So Eric says to me a couple of things. One, he said, you start a foundation, look at my foundation, look at the businesses I run. And when people talk about the reasons they can't do, I tell them, look, I can't dress myself. I can't dry myself. I can't brush my own teeth, but look at what I've accomplished. By the way, he says it with a huge smile. And two, the other thing he says to me is really compelling. He's like, Scott, you go to a doctor and a doctor tells you something like you have 30 days to live. My initial reaction is, wow, that's great because he could have told me I had one day to live. Again, it's all about perspective and relative happiness and gratefulness. And if some of your listeners can take away the opportunity, regardless of where they are in life, and everyone is at a different place. And by the way, everyone has lows, right? We all do. There's no human, myself included, that's happy all the time. There's grateful and positive all the time. But if you start to go through the mindset of learning these practices and bringing these to the workplace, because again, we're talking about leadership, which is really your focus, it's all relative. So again, getting back to your specific question, most leaders buy into what I'm saying. I think some have a hard time making it a priority in terms of what they're focusing on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you for that example about Eric too. You're really good at this. You answered a lot of questions that I was going to ask.
We're having fun. We're having fun.
We're having fun. We're having fun. So let's see. I was going to ask about one small shift that you believe each leader can make, but you touched on the smiling. I thought that was a really good example of just really practicing, even kind of having your face get comfortable at that level. They
Just
talk about
smile.
that resting B face, like you have
Yeah, just
you have
smile.
Yeah, you can hold on.
Smile, engage with people around you. Another thing I tell people is that everyone has a story. So in the book, and what I talk about is a philosophy I call Lit Sig, Life is Too Short Guide, Lit Sig, the LITSG, and there are 10 principles associated with it. And one of them is you can't make it alone. And it's a big one. That's one I'm a huge believer in, and the power of community, the power of social relationships. And I would suggest to leaders, build relationships with the people you lead, build relationships with the people you work with, by the way, build relationships with those around you and get to know people in a real, meaningful, and deep way. People want to be understood. People want to be known. People want to be heard. And people want you to show up in a way that's truly caring, that's vulnerable, that opens you up, opens them up. That builds better teams. That builds better relationships, and that creates better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's great. You got me sold, Scott. You got me sold.
There you go.
I'm like a cheerful, excited, happy New Jerseyan. I'm like,
That's it.
you represent the state well, sir.
Living the
Very
dream.
well.
Living the dream. Born, bred, raised, spent my entire life here. I am
Oh
Jersey.
my
Jersey
goodness.
gets.
Wow, wow. Let's see, we talked about some small shifts people can make. And I know a lot of the people listening, they're going through their own maybe transition, or some might be burnt out, or really at a point where they're rethinking different aspects of their life.
Good.
When people think about your legacy, what do you hope they remember about the way you showed up?
Well, for me, it's about having a positive impact on the people that I surround myself with, the people that I speak to, the people that I meet, the people that I want to change people's lives for the better. Let me give you a wonderful example that I'm so proud of. Earlier this year, I'd say March, my family and I flew. It was spring break for my kids, and we flew down to. Actually, you know what? It wasn't even March. I take it back. It was the end of last year. It was December.
Oh, okay,
Go to
okay.
Turks and Caicos,
Oh,
and
nice.
we got on a van outside the airport, and a couple got on with us. And again, going back to what I said, can't make it alone. I always try and engage with people. So right away, I'm like, hey, where are you from? We start talking. We're probably together 15, 20 minutes in the van. And along the journey, we talk about a couple of different things. And as the couple's getting out, the gentleman mentions a couple of things that he's thinking about, some transitions. He's in school, career, so on and so forth. I give him a copy of my book.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
About a week ago, so this was 6 months later, I got a long email from this gentleman, his name is Chris, talking about what a major impact I've had on his life, how the book transformed his thinking, how our interaction in that short
Mm.
trip together helped him see the world differently, helped him cope with some things that he's dealing with, and how grateful and fortunate he feels that our paths collided. So I would say I hope my legacy is many more of those stories. People that I've had an impact on, people that I've helped to think differently, people that I've opened their eyes, people that I've transformed, people that even in a small way. Look, you're not gonna everybody I meet, I'm not going to change their life in a meaningful way. But if I could have people smile a little bit more, if I could have people wake up in a positive way, if I could have, I talked about interacting with strangers. Maybe somebody listening to this, they hang up and they go outside for a walk, and the mailman is putting mail in their mailbox. How you doing today? What's going on? Where are you from? How long you been doing this? What's your name? How many people know the name of their mail carrier? How many people know the name of the person that serves them coffee?
Yeah.
Interact with the world around you. Make the place a better place.
Yeah, no, I love that. And a lot of times when you're dealing with strangers, you have a chance to reset and reinvent yourself, right? You can, if you have this pattern of not engaging people, you can just decide, I'm going to be on this flight for 2 hours. I'm going to strike up a
100%.
conversation with
Oh
the
boy.
person next to me. Or yeah, yeah. So I love
I've
that.
made a lot of friends on planes. I've given out a lot of
Exactly.
books on planes. I've kept in touch
Exactly.
with people I've met on planes. There's no doubt. That's a great example. I travel a lot, and I make a lot of friends on planes.
Me too. Me too. No, I believe it. What I want to do next is just kind of switch things up a little bit. There's kind of this quick fire fun activity that I've been adding at the end of our conversations, just because it gives the audience a different perspective on you as the guest.
Okay.
So what we can do next is this game called Pattern Check. And it's not too complicated. I just need you to respond with whatever comes first to mind when you hear these two different words, and you can
Oh
just
boy.
give the audience background on which word you gravitate to and why. Okay.
Okay.
So there's no wrong answer or anything like that.
All right. I hope I pass.
Okay. So the first set of words is vision or execution. Which one are you drawn to and why?
I'm definitely an execution guy. That's been the nature of my career. Get it done quickly, get it done right, get it done, exceed expectations.
Yeah.
I'd like to grow into more visionary. I think it's something that I'm personally working on.
No, I can relate to that. I can relate to that too. Speak up or listen first.
Speak up. Maybe I should listen first, but I am quick with I love engaging with people. I love to lead conversations, maybe to my detriment at times. I certainly could learn to listen more, but I'm a speak up first guy.
Push through or pull back.
Push through. I'm always pushing hard. It is rare that I reset, step back. It happens, by the way. I wouldn't say never. There's no doubt, but usually it's a push through.
And you can finish the sentence. Leadership is,
A calling, an opportunity, and the ability to impact the world around you.
oh, wow. Okay. Powerful. What about this? More time or more freedom?
It's a tough one. I'd go with more freedom. I value my freedom. I think it's really important for people to have freedom to choose what they do, where they do it, with whom they do it, when they do it. I think the world has evolved in a post-COVID world with more of the geographic freedoms that people have. I know that there are a lot of people being called back to work, and some companies are changing their shift on that. But I've been a work from home person for about 11 years now.
Oh, really? Okay.
And there's no doubt there are trade-offs, but I really value the freedom to work where I want, when I want, with whom I want, how I want.
No, I can relate to that for sure. So, Scott, thank you for being here and for walking us through your journey. I mean, not just your wins, but the shifts behind them. Is there anything you want to share with the audience about something excited that's coming up for you?
Well, there's a lot of exciting things. A lot excites me. Primarily right now, it's getting on stages around the country, maybe someday around the world, spreading this message of happiness, gratefulness, positivity, living in the moment. So, to the extent that anyone is looking for a positivity speaker, you know how to find me at lifeistooshortguy.com. The other thing that I'm excited about and doing is I'm going to spend some time coaching executives, coaching C-suite executives, and starting to spend some time giving back. As I think about transforming lives and having a positive impact on people, I've been fortunate in that I've led a few companies now, and I'd like to help other leaders learn to lead, and I am spending time as an executive coach.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, I relate to that totally. And through the years, just even in the work I do in HR, just people ask for advice. They ask, whether it's informal or on a plane, a circumstance or scenario, people will run by you. And so, same here, just looking for ways to add value and really just embrace the meaning of my name. Bukola means added to the greatness. I'm just always just trying to, especially
Awesome.
especially at this point in life, just find ways to add value to those around me. So I can totally relate to that. That's
Well,
awesome.
I think this podcast is a big step in that direction.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm very excited. It's stretching me as someone who didn't grow up with the internet or social media. It's stretching me, but I've learned a lot. So, Scott, this conversation was a powerful reminder that leadership isn't just about results. It's about how we move through the world. And I just really appreciate you making time to talk with me. Let's see, before we close, let's just remind folks one more time of how to get a hold of you.
Lifeistooshortguy.com.
All right. All right. So, everyone, that's all we have for this day. Really enjoyed our time with Scott. You're listening to Beyond the Pattern Life and Leadership Unlocked. As I said, I'm your host, Bukola, and I hope this conversation reminded you that the most important transformation isn't always external. Sometimes the most powerful shifts start from inside. So until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and keep moving beyond the pattern. Have a good week, everybody. Thanks. If this episode resonated, I'd love to hear from you. You can text or leave a voicemail at 404-828-0279. That's 404-828-0279. Or you can visit me at bukalaogintala.com to send in a question, share your story, or explore coaching and speaking services. Whether you're leading a team or learning to lead yourself, I'm honored to be on this journey with you. And if you haven't already, hit follow or subscribe so we can keep growing together.